Folks, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Cracking the Comms Code. I'm Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. And with me are Hinda, Jake, and Kevin. And what we're going to talk about today is the importance of account executives, not just to an agency in general, right? Most agencies have account executives. Their actual importance to the bottom line of a company, because they're not just PR people, they're not just client managers. They're actually responsible in most cases for the majority of money that an agency makes. And what we have here is Hinda, who's grown an agency. Kevin, who's a VP overseeing account executives, and then Jake, who's a senior account executive at Finn Partners. So, Hinda, Kevin, Jake, if you can briefly introduce yourselves, we'll kick things off.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Hinda Mitchell with Inspire. We are headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, and we are a mid-sized firm of about 22, and we love all of our account executives.
Uh, Nice to meet everybody. I'm Kevin Santo. I'm an associate vice president at Water and Wall. We are a 10-person marketing and PR agency focused on supporting B2B brands, but especially across financial and professional services. And I'm just really excited to chat with everyone today. And I think give account executives the credit they deserve as a critical part of any successful agency.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jake Ciccarelli. I'm a senior account executive here at Finn Partners, based out of the New York office, working on our East Coast tech team, working on clients anywhere from fintech to cybersecurity and robotics. So super excited for the conversation today.
So, I'm going to tell a story. But my agency, I started, Proven Media Solutions is the only agency I've ever worked for. And for the first 7 years, I was doing sales, I was doing much of the writing, much of the editing, all the placements, and almost all the client management. And with Robert helping me out. And now we've gone from 4.5 people to 11 in the last year, and I don't really talk to the clients that much. I'm not doing any of the writing, or hardly ever. I hardly touch half the pieces. I'm only doing half the pitching. It's been a radical change in our company structure in the last year. And what I noticed in February is that our biggest client became even bigger. And it wasn't because I was doing anything. It was because my colleagues who run that account were making it bigger and better. Partly for PR side, partly client management, partly new resources they could bring to the table, connections they have that I just didn't. And I realized they are more important to sales than I am. Because if we grow 50% this year, which we're on track to do, sure, I'm going to bring in new accounts, new clients, but they're the ones who keep, let's say, the 50%, the two-thirds. If we grow 50%, the first two-thirds, the money actually coming in the door. Without it, everyone's getting laid off. And so I wanted to think about this because this was a sort of newer insight to me. But Hinda, you have a fantastic story that you laid out from last century related to how you built your firm on this sort of principle. And so I asked Hinda, who I've known, we knew her a decade ago when I was in the pet industry, and I know she's grown a culture, strong company. Kevin is coming to us to speak as somebody who oversees account executives, and Jake is the senior account executive. And so we're going to talk from two different perspectives: how owners and VPs should think about account executives, and how account executives should recognize that being responsible for sales shouldn't be intimidating. It should actually be a badge of honor. And no, you don't have to be that good at math to do it. So, Hinda, I'd like you to kick off, tell that fantastic story you told us an hour ago.
Absolutely. So thank you. I think about I've been in the agency world for more than 30 years. And in that time, we've grown to be a firm that has a very deep specialty in food and agriculture. But I didn't grow up in farming. I didn't, that's not my world. But back when I was an account executive at the tender age of 25, 26, in 1995, I think, I was in the line of sight for my boss, and he was going to a meeting, and he said, "Hey, can you go to this meeting with me?" And I said, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, who are we meeting with?" And he said, "Well, we're going to go meet with a group of farmers." And I was like, "All right, whatever, right?" But that moment, that client from 1995 remains our client today. So you think about that start to my career as a young account executive and the ability that I had to do that work, to build that relationship and to carry that relationship 32 years later. I can't think of a better reason to say, yep, account executives sure do matter. Because if you invest the right time and the right opportunity for them, they'll deliver it back tenfold.
Yeah, Hinda, I would just add, like, I think a big part of that is trust. And I feel like an account executive is the one driving that relationship, that trust between a client and an account team in the day to day. And again, to your story, like I just feel like from my vantage point, one of the most effective things we can do is give them tools to succeed in the context they need, but also trust them and let them make mistakes. I feel like that's the quickest path to learning and sort of honing your skills so quickly. So I just think it's a great story that kind of illustrates all sides of this whole conversation, honestly.
Yeah, and I'll throw in too, I mean, as a senior account executive here at Finn, I mean, they let me make mistakes every day. They give me the trust to go on and go for it or run with it. But of course, you have the oversight and the support of the VPs and the partners and the people above them. So you're always supported. So it's really not that scary or that intimidating, I guess, as someone who's doing it, because at the end of the day, like they've got you, they're there for you. So just want to throw that out there too as part of the conversation. I mean, it's important to make mistakes and learn.
I think that's right. I think, as an agency owner, as somebody who's been in agencies for 3 decades, we have an obligation, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to do this till I'm 110. And but the work has to carry on. And, that ability to trust them, to take them to a meeting cold and say, she won't screw it up too badly. That's the beginning of a journey that will make their entire career. And so every step along that journey matters so much.
Well, and when you grow a company, right? There's a book I'm reading. I've read it now, I think 3 times this year. In fact, it was my obsession for about 3 months by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time. BUY, Buy Back Your Time. And it was targeted to founders, to owners of companies, about how when you start as a founder, you're always doing all the work. Then you have to build, through clients or whatever, the different things you have to build, the operational side, your accounting. But he points out most people grind and then they fall apart if they're the founder because they've not bought back their own time. And I'm thinking about somebody who started his company, I want to say it was 25 years ago. They grew to a 15-person company for a lot of years, and then they went from 15 to 100 in about 4 or 5 years. Last time I talked to him a couple of years ago, he told me, I'm not even involved in hiring. And so I want to throw to you, Hinda, is, part of the reason Kevin is here is not because there are other people in the organization, but Andrew, who was the first person I met at this company, was said, I'm not even involved in really our clients anymore, our account executives anymore. He's the owner. He's doing a lot of other things. He can't be overseeing this. So I would love for you, Henry, to speak as the owner on how you graduated, so to speak, from overseeing the hiring and being directly with account executives to how you train those mid-level people like Kevin or mid-upper level so they can create that same culture, management style, that emotional safety that Jake described. Very interested in that.
Absolutely. And I think it really, and one of the things that makes Inspire, I think, a little different is I always say, they talk about agencies being pyramids, and I always think we're a square, and one of the places where we see so much value is when that AE transitions into like an account manager, senior account manager, account supervisor, what I call the middle rung, the middle of our square, right? And those people, they come, you can hire them, but those are often people who are elevated and lifted within your organization. And so when I think about sort of how we build a bench,
Right.
that bench has all of these different levels along the way. And one of the things that we've been very intentional about in Inspire is career mapping, because we want people to be able to see how can they start as an account coordinator or even an intern and become an SVP, VP, maybe even me someday, because like I said, I'm not doing this forever. And so I think we have to sort of really recognize the fact that those AEs, that bottom of the square, they're the touch points, right? They're the ones going out every day. They're building these relationships. They're providing deliverables. they are your brand. They are your brand in the trenches, getting stuff done. And if they're doing that, then that middle tier of the square can start to be leaders. And then that leadership team can start to really be strategic. And that's when the owner, the founder, can start to opt out. I remember we had our 10th anniversary party at Inspire a few years back, and we got to the party, and I was like, I don't even know all these people. But that was when I knew I was on the way.
Right. Yes. Yes. We've graduated from friends and family in the last year. And literally of the people we've hired in the last year, I met one through LinkedIn. Another was a former client. Another came referred to by somebody else who worked with him 5 years ago. Like it's just this network of eclectic people we've gathered. And I'm like, I don't know everyone's background anymore. Like in 3 years, if we keep growing, even just 20% a year,
Mhm.
I won't know everybody. Like you're saying, Hinda. Once we have 15 or 20 people, I'm not going to know everybody.
Yep.
I also would say that I think the career pathing point is so important too. Like I think for account executives, I just see so much value in sort of communicating the why behind the work they're doing. And like, I think that applies to true client deliverables and strategy, but it should also apply to why they're doing this for their own personal career and what the future could look like.
Yep.
I feel like if you're not doing that, you're kind of doing them a disservice. Hey, I just want to follow up on that. I feel like it's a really good point and something like we started formalizing probably 2 or 3 years ago now. And that's a big reason why.
Yep. Yep. I've always said I think the best thing about being in an agency environment, with that, for me at least, hands down, is no day looks the same. Right. And I was telling you my day has gone off the rails today. But no day looks the same. And but yet that's also, I mean, there's no better learning opportunity. You're going to get exposed when you start at an agency as an account executive, senior account executive, whatever it might be, you're going to be exposed to so many different opportunities. And you're going to, people often have a specialty, but I think all of us have to show up as a generalist in some form or another and be able to talk about all of the different practice areas that we might want to tap. I'm sure, Jake, you're doing all sorts of things every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can throw in there too. I mean, before Finn, I didn't work at an agency. I like freelanced for a little bit or did some subcontracting, but I actually applied for the role I have now because Dustin actually referred me, which is funny. And it was it was for an account executive position, and I remember interviewing, and they told me after the fact, like, "Hey, like, we actually want to hire you as a senior account executive. Here are the, accounts you're going to be supporting." And before that, I was in the founder world, like helping raise money, helping shape a founder's persona. I think we ended up raising like 1.1 million over like 2 years or something, right? Or like a year and a half. So that was like the main business goal here. And now I'm supporting, like a Fortune 200 company is one of my clients here. And it's like not every piece of media is going to be of interest to them. And that's had to be a really big adjustment too, is like at a startup, you're like any and all media is good. It's great. It's great for SEO. But now you have to be like a lot more strategic. So, I mean, at first, like I was making these huge mistakes. I wouldn't even say huge mistakes, I guess, but like, like, oh, we should be doing this or we should be doing that. And they're like, no, like it's not worth their time. You know what I mean? Or like you have to be like, you grow that like discernment in a way, just by learning and just kind of, I guess, falling on your face sometimes, which I've done a lot of over the last year here and learned so much because of people, like Kevin and Hinda, of course.
Kevin, I was saying in our prep call, we have somebody whose background is in writing and editing who's shown an interest in client management. And this person doesn't have a lot of background in that. And just right before our prep call, I was on the phone with this person saying, you don't have to say I've never done it. We know you haven't. You don't have to say that because you just go do it. Just give it your best shot. And if you have any questions, instead of saying, I don't know what to do, I'll do my best. Say, okay, these are the three things that I see that I think I should be doing. Am I missing anything? Let me know and I'll get started. And I was really trying to create that environment of, I don't love this term, but emotional safety for ideas, for making mistakes, etc. So Kevin, I'd be very interested in how you, on a day-to-day basis, provide that love, the constructive criticism as well as the opportunity for growth, for making mistakes. Because again, I hate to use this cliched phrase, but we're in PR. My wife's a former ER nurse. Like, no one's going to die if a press release gets written wrong. So how do you reinforce that with younger team members who are maybe more anxious or stressed or whatever about making everybody happy, whether it be clients or you guys?
Mhm.
Yeah. I would go back to my the start of my own career. I mean, like I went to college thinking I was going to go to business school and gave up on that after a month of Econ 101. And then
Yeah.
fast forward, I thought I wanted to do a career in journalism and scrapped that plan too, and ended up at the agency life. Similar to this story, Dustin, where I'd never served a client. I just knew how to write
Yeah.
and had to
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
sort of correlate those skills to the new profession. And one of the things I was fortunate to have was people who were willing to walk me through the mistakes, but also
Yeah.
had my back and gave me the confidence of like, to your point, it's not the end of the world. And there's a path to, I think, sort of gradually letting an AE get into those more senior, important tasks, but not giving them more than they can chew from the jump. Um, and Jake, you made a good point earlier, like in terms of people who may be above you, like having your back and being there for if things go wrong.
Yeah.
I think it sounds so simple, but I think that's one of the most important things you can do to empower an AE on top of sort of the onboarding process and sitting down with them to educate them on whatever sector their client may be in.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway,
Totally.
I'm rambling. Jake, I'd love
Yeah.
your perspective on this too.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I mean, like there were certain things at the beginning, I'll say, actually, I've been at Finn a year today, and I just realized that. I'm like, it's the 24th. I remember a year ago, like when I first started, and they were like, yeah, you're gonna talk about these points on this client call, or like, you're gonna chime in here. I'm like, I'm gonna talk on a client call. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and it's like over the last year, like, of course, I've gotten more confident about it, but then there's sometimes too where the client might ask a question and I don't know the exact answer, or something. And the VP will chime in. And I feel confident enough to speak because even if I don't know the answer to the client's question that's going to come from me sharing something, even though, I've gotten a lot better at anticipating what they're going to ask and, thinking more ahead. I know that they're going to jump in and they're going to be like, okay, well, no, so like this is what happened, or this is what we were thinking. This is a thought process behind it because, beyond me, also the folks that are at the VPs and the partners, they're also talking strategy. And as an SAE, I might not be on the strategy conversations, but I'm helping carry out those strategies, right? So they can maybe talk a little bit more like the thought process behind what Jake was just sharing was blah, 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 or like because we discussed this on our strategy call. So yeah, I think it is super important because I mean, if I like flounder during a call, they can just kind of jump in and they're like, okay, no, it's like what Jake was getting at here. And it's not like a you're not capable because they're like, go for it, you're capable, do it. And there's sometimes too where I'll be like, I can't, like, I don't know if I can speak to this. And one of the VPs told me like 2 weeks ago, she was like, you can speak to that. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I was like, you're right. I can't. I don't know why I doubted myself. So it is that confidence, that you were talking about too, and that support. So I mean, it's crucial, I think, to growth, and I think it's been, I don't know, super important for me over the last year.
Yeah, and I'll just jump off of both of those and say just a couple of sort of disparate thoughts. One is track changes has been terrible for learning. Because if I track changes in something and send it back, it has no meaning. We've got, and sometimes that's all you can do, right? If you're moving fast. But wherever you can, you need to sit down and say, here's why I changed this. And if you have to do it in
Yeah.
track changes, put it in the comments and say,
Yes,
make the
always.
edits, but then put in the comments, we needed to lead with the more current situation, right? Or
Yes.
whatever it might be. But that's one thing. Another thing, and Jake, you said this but stop just short. And I think I just want to emphasize if you're going to have somebody on a call, especially a less experienced person, give them a role.
Yeah.
No client gets confidence from watching somebody sit there like a bump on a log. And
Yeah.
so I think if, we need to give,
Yeah,
we as senior leaders, as practitioners, we have to give people a role.
Yeah.
And in those
yeah,
meetings, this is what you're going to talk about. And you know what?
yeah,
Jake is ready to talk to you about this campaign piece, right? Or whatever, we've got to
right.
be, we as senior leaders have to elevate them and say, they're the ones with all
Mhm.
the smarts on this. It's not me. It often isn't me.
Yeah.
I had to learn that earlier this year because I started making the transitions from the clients I was running to clients my team was going to be running. And our biggest client, we let them know in November this person will be taking over in the new year. But then we did an in-person, which is extremely rare for us now. And I made sure this person increasingly took responsibility on calls. But I made a mistake. We were working with a new prospect, and I said, Robert's going to take over, when we start working together. The person didn't end up signing on their because of reasons on their end. But I realized after the call, on our end, I had done probably 80% of the talking. One of our consultants who was going to play a key role did about 8%. Another person who's going to be in support role did about 6%. And the person who's actually going to be running the account did about 4%.
Mm-mm.
And I realized it was because I hadn't prepped beforehand. This person I've been working together for years. So I just assumed he would jump in, but I'm the owner. He's always going to follow my lead, even though in many respects we're equals. But because this is my prospect, I met this prospect through LinkedIn. I built a relationship. He's going to look for me to throw to him. And so what we've done now is before every meeting, like especially the bigger meetings, we always prepare for 15 minutes. And
Mhm.
even just yesterday, this person who I mentioned earlier is making this sort of a transition role in a client support. I said, you have a great story to tell on this. When you meet with a client for the first time today, tell that story so they can see you understand them. But I appreciate, Kevin, you raising this as a systematic process because I don't think it's yet systematic for us. So I want to bring that into our process. Thank you.
Yeah. And listen, it's something I honestly struggled with myself, like at this phase of my career, is getting comfortable delegating and not always carrying the load myself. Um, I just think like I quickly realized the value of it. Like there, we have one client who works in the wealth management space. Um, and I was driving so many of the calls to your point, Hinda, of like not giving them a speaking role. And
Yep.
then I finally do, and fast forward like 3 weeks, and I get a message from the client with feedback about how the two of them below me are knocking it out of the park. And like
Nice.
that just has a trickle down effect, right? Because then it builds their confidence. The client is happier for it. I just think it's an interesting topic to keep in mind for all levels of an agency, you know?
Yeah, and if I can jump in too, I mean, I remember one of the VPs who typically, will jump in and run the call was actually out sick a couple weeks ago. And on that account, it's the VP, myself, then an assistant account executive. And I remember like it was the client call, and I was like, uh-oh, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, uh-oh. And of course, one of our partners joined who also is like part of the strategy on the account. And I just kind of jumped in and started going, and me and the AAE just were switching on and off, like what we were owning, what we weren't owning, discussion points. And then after the fact, I was like, did I like mess that up? Like I remember thinking, I was like, that was my first time really doing it without, like the VP in the room with me, or like the person who's like the day-to-day like senior person I'm going to with questions in the room. And after that, I feel like I got like this weird confidence now where I'm like doing the calls, and I'm like, wait, I've done this like, I don't want to say by myself, but I've done this like, with less oversight before. And it's like, it does give you that confidence, like to your point, Kevin, like with your team. And whether the client notices or not, I'm like, I notice it for myself. And I'm sure your team members might say that to themselves,
Mhm.
is like they feel more empowered maybe to speak up or to share things, or they feel more respected even by the client as like counsel or something.
Mhm. And I will say on the other side of the equation, I remember somebody said to me once, Hinda, there's no mistake you can make that I can't fix. And I was like, all
True.
right,
Yeah.
like push comes to shove. It's like Dustin, you started the call talking about your wife, and it's like, yeah, this is not ER. There's almost nothing. Some things would be worse than others. We had a
Right.
couple of print jobs over the years that had to be rerun, and that was a little costly, but fixable.
I'm going to share my screen because Kevin, you reminded me. This is my post on Friday. This is my LinkedIn post that I'm putting up in 2 days. Literally, two clients I was in meetings with, one of whom requested an upsell meeting, forgot to mention me when praising us because I wasn't involved with the client anymore. And one of them was actually our biggest client, and we have 4 or 5 projects with them any given month. And they literally said, "We love working with Carrie and Jordan. Oh, and you too, Dustin." Like both of these people said this 48 hours apart. And as I say here, like this means they're doing their job
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
because, and I want to throw to Hinda next, we can't do it all when you're growing the company. And so one of the things, Hinda, you said in our prep call was that agencies traditionally pushed work down to the account executives to
Mhm.
save, to lower costs. But you had a different reason for that. And while you do that, I'm going to lower my desk because I tweaked my knee, so I'm going to go sit down now. But I wanted to talk through that because that's the transition, I think, to the next part of our conversation is how you build the bench.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think what I said was, yeah, there are a lot of sort of stories out there that say, well, agencies just want to, push work down to the most junior people they have, right? And we try to use junior people strategically, right? When the work fits and when we want to give them a stretch goal or things like that. But the most important part of that is the only way to grow up as an agency is to grow within.
Mhm.
And so, we owe it to our future to invest the time, to invest the teaching, to give them those stretch opportunities to say, you know what? This is probably gonna make your brain hurt a little. And here's why you're gonna do it. And I'm gonna help you, but I'm not gonna rescue you. And I think that's one of the hardest things I think that I've had to adjust to is I can't rescue everybody. My nature is to be a fixer. And but giving young talent opportunities is how you create stability. I mean, you think about, go back to the pyramid example, right? If an agency truly is a pyramid, I said we're a square, but an agency that truly is a pyramid, what holds the pyramid up?
Right.
It ain't
Yeah.
that person up here. It's those
Right.
people down there. And so if you want to be stable, if you want to position yourself for the long term, shame on you if you don't build that
Right.
lowest level of your pyramid.
Yeah, I would just add, I think we made the point earlier that like not every PR pro is the same, and I think that's especially relevant on the sort of upskilling, training, giving an account executive something they may be scared of. Like for me personally, my manager got to know me and knew I could handle being thrown in the deep end and told to sort of figure it out. I think that another person, it's a totally different scenario. You got to meet people where they are and give them templates to follow, while also empowering them to like help them put the pieces together of like you did these 3 things in the last month that all add up to this larger project that I'm giving you. Like it doesn't need to be done overnight. Um, and I would just add as a final point, like you need to train people too. Like like it's not as simple as just saying go do it. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not enough to say learn by my example either. I don't think. Um, Jake, I don't know if you have any other
Yeah.
thoughts. I'll stop.
No, I was gonna jump in there too. When I first started last year, I remember the first thing I was telling people too, as like a senior account executive when I came on, I was like, I learned by you throwing me in the deep end. And I think it's important for the people who are at my level below or slightly above, whatever it may be, to communicate that. Like what you were saying, some people need a template, some people want to be thrown in the deep end. And I remember within the first month, like I was helping write an award submission for a product I never heard of.
Oh, you're telling me this, Jake. Yes,
Yeah.
you're telling me that.
Yeah, and I was like, I've never worked in this industry and I've never heard of this product. So, you're doing research, you're looking at previous winners, and I was like, let me just take my best shot at it. And if you hate it, please just tell me. Because that's what I say. I'm like, I'm open to feedback. I'm not going to take it personally if you're like, hey, like this kind of sucks and like here's why. Like, even if they said it that way, I could take it. So I think it's important for the AEs, SAEs, account coordinators, whatever the case is, to communicate and say, this is how I learn. And I think good leaders, adapt to those learning styles and, empower those people who are trying their best and trying to get caught up to speed, but also, become a bigger contributor on their teams.
And in a world of hybrid and remote, leaders have to be even more intentional about that because
Yeah.
what's gone is the osmosis, right? I started this call talking about my line of sight experience that shaped my whole career. If I hadn't been in an office, who knows
Oh,
what Hinda 2.0 would have looked like.
it's a really good point. I when I started working from home in 2013, before it was both necessary and cool, um, my now business partner, I also call him Dad, my kids call him Grandpa. He said to me, Dustin, this is a really bad thing. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, you're not going to develop well professionally. And I said,
Right.
I'm a reporter. Like I go to press conferences, I'm a writer, I'm an extrovert. This will be easy. Well, in 2019, so fast forward 6 years, my company's been around for 15 months. My oldest child was about a year old. And several people at a business club, all of whom were very respected. Some of them were on the board with my very shy personality, wink, wink. I got to know a lot of people there. And several people across several different groups within this business club told me variations on the following. Dustin, you're too salesy and you're alienating a lot of people. And between November and of that year, 2019, and February, right before the pandemic really hit, several of these same people said, I don't know what you're doing, Dustin, but it's working. I had to grow up 5 years in the span of 3 months because the incentive for me was I got to prepare, take care of my family because we have a baby. At that time, we were due with our second. Our second child was born March 14th of 2020, the day the world closed down. I had to grow up because I had lost 6 years of development on my personality, which is, the strength being outgoing. The downside is that I definitely had a natural lack of emotional intelligence. And that's an explosive combination on a bad day. And I didn't learn that in my early 30s. And so I
Right.
did lose a lot of that professional maturation at that time period, to your point, Hinda.
Yeah. I mean, we could do probably a whole other show about all the things we would advise, young
Oh,
people
much.
starting in the profession to do,
Yes.
honestly. But
Oh,
I
much.
think, one of the things is, and I tell my team this all the time, professional development is 50-50. I can throw opportunities at you, but you also have to seek them out.
Yep.
And, like we pay for you to go to conferences, we pay for memberships
Yeah.
and webinars and this and that and the other. And it's like,
Mhm.
as leaders, we have to offer that opportunity, but that's only half the equation. And I think it's
Right.
really important, like I said, that's probably for another show, but
Well, but it's a good transition to where I want to go for the next 20 minutes. We've talked about management theory top down. Let's reverse it because half of our audience that we want to influence here is the company owner, and company VPs. But now we want to empower the senior account executives because again, a lot of what we've talked about has been how to empower Jake. Let's flip it because what I really got thinking about, what led to this call to an op-ed I just published on this topic in the last few weeks, is what is considered the bad part of the job, sales, is actually the whole part of the job. And that's not because a PR account executive is necessarily sending the invoice or is doing the proposal or involved in the proposal call. But because if a company grows 50%, right? For those of you who are bad at math, that's adding 50% at the top. But that means 2/3 had to be kept coming in.
Hmm.
And I'm the owner. I'm not running any clients right now, right? I'm bringing in new sales. But if I grow 50% and we lose the other 2/3, well, everyone's gone but me, and maybe an assistant. And so I really want to talk about how account executives, a lot of PR people say we're bad at math. Oh, sales. I want to do PR. PR is sales. And there's two aspects to that. There's the PR practice, media pitching, uncovering stories, etc. And then there's the client management. There's the screenshot I put up earlier where our client says, we love working with these other people. And that's not because of the headlines that we got for them. That's because of the relationship that was built and the trust that was built. So I'd like to flip that around, Jake, because I'll start with you this time instead of Hinda. You have a background in business, and I know something about that background. I met you when you were at that startup.
Yeah.
How, I don't think you're intimidated by the idea that you're involved in sales. You're involved on the bottom line. Can you explain a little bit why you're not uncomfortable with that? Because most account
Yep.
executives will find that intimidating on a math level and oh my God, I could cause this company to go under level.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, I was at that same startup, sometimes we looked in the bank account and we had a couple months of runway. You know what I mean? And like no investments in the pipeline. And it's like, how do you make sales? And I remember I actually personally had to do sales for like an entire summer. And I think we grossed over six figures, because we were like, we just got to really put everything into sales. And I was like, I'll do sales.
Sure.
So that's on a personal note, but I think on a professional note too, I mean, I think it's just a reality of all of our jobs. And I know it's like a really plain way to put it, but like in the first month, I was like, okay, like what clients do I need to prioritize over others? And it's like all of our clients are priority, right? And it's like if there's two deadlines and it's like this client is super, super important because they are, they spend this much money monthly or they do this much on projects and stuff like that. You might need to prioritize this and then delegate this on another account and then, be the person that checks it. So there is that business aspect too, where you have to say like, okay, what is going to be the biggest priority, but also like, how can I continue to build a relationship with these folks, personally? And I mean, I'm not super intimidated by it just because, I mean, we all have to do it in one way or another. And also at Finn, I mean, I'm part of the new business here. Like I went to a new business pitch a week ago in person, and helped do the presentation with it. And I think that's super important too, is involving some junior level folks because I would have been on that account, if we won the business. And I think like what Dustin was saying earlier too is like having the folks that are going to be actually running the account there and speaking and talking to the folks,
Mhm.
and really understanding it. So, I mean, on my side of things at Finn, they do a really, really good job of, involving everyone in the new business process, but also like, I guess, emphasizing like what is super important, right? And it's like this client is super important because they've been with us for 10 years. And these are the things that we've done for them. These are the important things. This is what matters to them, because one cares more about accolades, the other one cares more about top tier media. One cares about trades, the other one cares about being on podcasts. So I'm kind of on a rambling point here, so I'll stop myself. I could go on and on, but I mean, I'm curious what you guys think as well, Kevin, Hinda, what I was sharing.
Yeah, Jake, I'll piggyback off you to just say very similar at our agency in that sort of regardless of your title, you're probably getting at least a little taste of the new business process. But as you sort of move up, that becomes more of your focus or priority,
Yeah.
right? But I think it's so critical just to sort of quickly give the team at least a little bit of line of sight into
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
financial side of
Yeah.
the whole business. Um, the flip side of that is, I think, from my point of view, it's important to communicate actual roles and responsibilities depending on your seniority. Because pulling this all back to the role of an AE, um, I don't think you can kind of overstate the financial impact of stability for a client.
Well,
Um,
really well put.
yeah, I just like from my point of view, like our average client relationship is like 5.5 years at Water and Wall, and like to be able to have that peace of mind that, to your point, Dustin, the existing two-thirds isn't going away while the other third is hunting new business is I just can't I feel like you can't really overstate how important that is. And I think it all
Yeah.
comes back to an AE's role.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it, which is new business. The best way to get new business is to grow it with clients you already
Yes.
have, which brings us
Yes.
right back to the very premise of this entire conversation, which
Conversation.
is
Hmm.
Yep.
AEs as salespeople, because if they're doing good work, if they're in touch enough with the client where they see the pain points, they see the opportunities, they see the problems that need solved, that client's going to grow. And you don't have to go out and chase it. You don't have to respond to an RFP. You don't have to do the
Yeah.
hard things because you can do the easy things. I mean, we've, as an agency that's grown a lot, we've talked a lot about, gosh, should we hire somebody to be in charge of business development, right? I think every agency, when you get to a certain size, starts having that conversation is, should we have a business development person? And I've always been of the mindset that every single person on our team is a business development person. And
Yep.
and that goes for the folks who are just starting out. That is everybody's responsibility. And we start them right in the door. We start them talking about this is how we make money. And this is what our cycle looks like for when bills come in and invoices go out and we report
Wow.
financials twice a year at a minimum to the team. And
The
like
whole,
we've got, yeah, the whole team.
so can I ask you about that? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Hinda. I'm breaking my 2-second silence rule, which I knew I was going to do. I think I told you it's going to happen twice. It's only happened once this time.
Okay.
Um, I'm very interested in that. And Kevin, I'd be very interested in Jake and your perspectives as well. Growing my agency is always that fine line between over transparency,
Mhm.
where people, if there's a short pipeline or sales are coming in, but current work is a little light, how do you how do you communicate that to the team in a way that builds confidence? To Kevin's point, that I think you said it so, okay, I hadn't thought of it quite that way, but that security aspect, right? I communicate with my team on a daily basis because we're still small enough. But yeah, I mean, not everyone has full insights into the financials except for me, in part because I know the big picture and try to explain bits and pieces. But at the same time, I want to be transparent so everyone feels confident, so there's not secrecy. I'd be very interested in how you balance that, or maybe what your
Sure.
strategy is.
I mean, let me be clear. There are measures that I look at that I would not choose to share because they would potentially, like, I mean, for example, in our business, one of the things we're always looking at are staffing and allocations. Everybody, I think, does that in some form or another.
Yes.
Sometimes the numbers look like we are wildly overstaffed. I
Yes.
don't share that number because that sounds scary, right? That looks like,
Right.
oh my
Right.
gosh,
I could be laid off next week.
if we
Right.
have 4 people more than we need right now, who's going, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's out, right? And that's never true. Knock on, we've never done that.
Right. Right.
You know, but that's I guess I share that because that's the kind of information that we wouldn't share. But we do have to say, listen, we show year over year, month by month. We show that revenue pipeline. Here's what we're looking like. Here's what's
Really?
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. And when we talk about, our expenses are up in this area, we had to renew this or that, and that, took a chunk out of this month, but
Mhm.
we like at year end, things look a little different. So we walk them through some of that. And I think it's just that we can't expect them to make good decisions
Mhm.
if we don't give them the information they need to do so. And that's true across the board.
Yeah, I would just echo that, Hinda. I have to mostly give credit to our founder, Andrew, who's in a similar position to you. And I would say he's taken a similar approach of not telling everything every day, but taking those moments on a quarterly basis to really fill the team in on what you talked about, revenue, profitability. And I think it builds trust. At the end of the day, um, I think zooming in a little bit on like my role and an AE's role, the way we've started to kind of incorporate that a little bit is just being more mindful of time spent on certain clients and being mindful of the budget for each client based on what their priorities are. Um, and to your point about staffing, like I feel like that helps keep everybody's capacity within a reasonable range
Yep.
to then evaluate, hey, if we get 3 clients tomorrow, what are we doing with them? Um, I don't know. I feel like I went on a slightly different angle there, but I just feel like it kind of all fits into the same puzzle a little bit in terms
I
of
think
being.
that's right. I think that's right. It does. I mean, and like I said, we just, and if, again, if we want people to come and stay, we have to help them see the why. We have to help
Yeah,
them see the long-term game. And that is, as much purposeful work as it is financial incentive.
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean too, like as an SAE, like it goes without saying too, is like when the company makes more money, you also have opportunity to make more money and get promoted. Do you know what I mean? Or like
Mhm.
more people get hired and you have more support on your accounts that you're even servicing now and then future clients. And I think that's fairly obvious, I would say, to most people, but maybe not to everyone, is like, people sometimes come in, they sit at their desk, they put their head down, and they just work and then they leave. But when you think about, places where you're looking at the big picture and it's like, okay, if this company is successful or if this company, gets more business in, that leads to maybe bigger bonuses at the end of the year. There is that financial personal incentive, I think, for AEs and SAEs that I think some folks probably miss. And I don't think it's a fault of the agency or the owner or the VPs. I think it's a fault of seeing beyond what your role day to day is, and like how success of the company also is part of your success, as an individual. And I mean, imagine being able to say at 25 years old that you brought in a piece of new business to an agency and they signed on. Most places will give you commission, but also like that's a really big feather in your cap, being able to say like I helped on business development and I actually helped boost revenue by 150,000 this year for this small agency or mid-sized agency, whatever the case may be. And that's like that should be a huge incentive in itself for the SAEs and AEs.
Well, and in our year-end sort of structure for how we choose bonuses, company performance is a big piece of it, but
Yeah,
there are other metrics that they're held accountable to.
right.
And if we don't tell them how we're doing over the course of the year, how can they, I'll give retainer over servicing, right? The bane of
Yeah.
every agency's existence. Um, and so, we hold folks accountable for that.
Yep.
But if we don't tell them in a month-to-month basis, hey, you're over, you're under, you're this, you're that, how in the name of heavens are they going to make good decisions?
Right.
Yeah, it's a learned muscle, I think. The
Yeah.
the over servicing, under servicing management.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point. It's a different muscle to sort of work on top of just trying to execute for a client. And that's hard, but I guess I would challenge any AE that's listening, like have that business mindset and develop it early. I think it'll serve you like really well.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm working that muscle too, you're talking about. So,
it's tough, man. It's tough. Like
Well, and at the same time, because we're all telling you,
yeah.
serve the client, make the client
yeah.
happy, right? And happy sometimes looks
Yeah.
like more hours than you have.
I mean, I would say the folks I report up to on like the VPs on the various accounts do a really great job of saying you're slotted for this many hours on the account. And
Yep.
within those amount of hours, this is the results that we expect, or these are things that we think we can achieve. Um, and some months you might fall short like a KPI, or you might fall short of a goal. And it's like, okay, where did I spend too much time? And you can look back and like, let's say NetSuite, wherever the case may be, whatever you use for billing, and saying, okay, I spent 10 hours on speaking and accolades, but the month before I only spent 5. So did we submit for more awards? And if the answer is yes, and it's like, okay, that makes sense why speaking and accolades went up, but like maybe your time spent on media relations went down and the amount of earned media coverage also went down for the month.
Mhm.
So it's kind
Right.
of that delicate balance and dance, I'll say, of like, how are you keeping the client happy, hitting your KPIs, but also like internally, how are you not over servicing, under servicing? And it is a muscle you have to build. And I mean, as an SAE, I'm still building
I'm
So,
still building it too. Don't worry, Jake.
it.
so Hinda, we've got about 8 minutes left. I want to wrap up on that, maybe possibly wrap up depending how long everyone talks. But one of the things that I've written about, I had a show about this last year, headlined very subtly, as is my wont, haha, why hourly billing should die in PR. That's a firm belief, and possibly biased by the fact that we do probably 80% of our business in any given month is op-eds. So we do a
Mhm.
huge amount of writing. And where, if you write faster, why should I pay you less? And if you pitch better, why should I pay you less? Because it took you one pitch instead of 10. But for the first time, and I've had a number of conversations with different PR professionals about how to pay. But Jake, between what you said and something that Hinda said, I think it's the first time I've ever heard of hourly billing to a client actually potentially being valuable. So you can see how that played out. So Hinda, you're what you said 21 people.
Mhm.
Do you do hourly billing? And if so, how do you make that work? And then Jake, I'd be interested in Kevin as well, how hourly billing plays
Sure.
your strategy.
Well, and I think we have to sort of delineate between are we keeping time? Do you mean
Yeah.
billing or do you mean timekeeping?
Oh, I assume that Jake was talking about billing the client at $400 an hour times
Mhm.
X. Are you talking
Okay.
about team management within the client?
Well, so we're probably about 50-50 hourly billing and retainers. You know, we work a lot in agriculture and they love time and materials, right? I want to pay
Yeah.
your for your time and I want to pay for the materials, right? It's like
Yeah.
buying corn.
Yeah.
And you know, and so but honestly, irrespective of whether it is a retainer, whether we are billing just, you know, that time and materials, whether it's a project fee, whether it's a, you know, 6-month defined contract amount, whatever that might be, I need to know how much time people are spending on stuff because otherwise, how in the heck do you know if you're over or under servicing or if you know, and as you think about then, how do I bill the next thing? The learnings come from the last thing. You know, how do I estimate that time? And so in that context, you know, even if we were to abandon hourly timekeeping or hourly billing to a client at the client facing side altogether, I'm still going to want to keep time. And it's why you see other businesses that aren't even professional services keeping time. Because if you don't know how people are working, how in
Right.
the name of heavens do you do any
You can,
financial or staffing allocation planning at all? I think, Kevin, you said it, which is capacity. You know,
Yeah.
how do I know, you know, if someone can take on more work? And, you know, what we don't want to do in the agency world is burn people out, especially newer people. And so if I don't know how much time is allocated to them, how in the heavens do I know if they're busy enough?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's what I think we do also do at Finn. Also, like for me as a senior account executive, like I know how many hours I have on each account and each client. I mean, I can't speak to whether we're billing hourly, retainers, those sorts of things. That's above me. That's the part that I'll say I'm a senior account executive. I don't know. So that's the part where I'll use my title to my advantage.
Mhm.
But no, I just know for me, it's like you have 25 hours a month on this client, right? So it's like you might have to be a little bit more strategic on how you're doing that because maybe they have 4 announcements in 1 month or like within a 2 month period. And then the next month they have one. And it's like, okay, look, well, I just spent, let's say, 40 hours on this client last month. I overserviced by 15 hours. And now this month, maybe I'm, let's say, under by 2 hours, whatever the case may be. But also not burning out and saying like, there's one client I have, I think like 80 hours on a month because it's like a very, very large client. I'm slotted for that many hours. Like half of my time should be spent on them, for the most part. So, I mean, it gives me a better idea too of like, okay, like I'm not over servicing this client, or like if this takes me a little bit longer, it's fine because it's probably supposed to be an in-depth project. It's just probably supposed to be a little bit more strategic and time consuming on my end because it is something I have more hours towards, if that makes sense. But also seeing
Does.
I'm spending my 80 hours, majorly doing media relations for this client, and that's the biggest priority for them. So I'm doing it right. And the VPs and owners and whatever the case may be, being able to say, okay, Jake and the other folks on the team day to day are spending their time correctly, or we need to rework some things and priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I would just say to echo Jake and Hinda, I think we use it more from a perspective of taking care of our team and making sure
Mhm.
also that their time is going to the right places.
Yeah.
We've had those types of transparent discussions with people of walking them through their hours
Yeah.
for a month and sort of helping them learn exactly what you just talked about, Jake.
Yeah.
Um, so again, I don't want to
No,
belabor the
but if
point.
we, but Kevin, sorry to interrupt, but to your
That's
point,
okay.
that's my 2-second rule. But to your point, if we want people to stay, if we want people to grow into being agency leaders, we got to start there. That's where
Yeah.
we have to start, right? We have
Totally.
to start by saying, you know, you have this account that's taking, you know, 10 hours a week. You have this account that's taking 20 hours a week. And oh, wait, you have this one that's supposed to be 30 hours a week. Now we have a problem. We don't want you to burn out, but we
Right.
want you to grow. So let's think about how can we do this? What do we have to, yeah,
Oh, it makes
double
sense.
tap.
Yeah, it's still something that we're I'm challenged by all the time because we a lot of our clients are, we call them drumbeat, right? So we have three kinds of clients. We have our general project clients, which can be with our business model. We don't require a retainer. So our project can literally be as small as we found you an offer. We wrote one op-ed and placed it, right? And so it can be project. We have drumbeat, which means you spend money with us at least three times in a 6 month period. And then we have contracts and retainers, right? 1 year contract versus a retainer might be a different scenario. And it's been a real interesting challenge for me as the leader because again, we've gone from 4.5 people to 11, including one operational person to three, part-time back end operations, accounting, sales, etc. And so probably every 2 to 3 months, I'm in touch with my client management and content team. We've split the company up by content management, content creation and client management to say, are you overloaded? Are you working 35 hours a week or 40? If it's 35, good, because it means if someone goes on vacation, we can all jump in and support each other. If you're at 40, okay, what are we doing wrong here? In fact, I just had that conversation today with one of my client managers who is overworked by about 6 hours a week. And some of that is this person's desire to please, and some of it is inefficiencies that we discovered. So I just had that conversation today because I know we're going to get new clients in the next 60 days.
Yeah, and one thing I'll throw out too, Dustin, as someone who's billing my time or filling out the timesheets is like, I remember one time I told my boss when I first started, I was like, if I spend 9 hours one day, do I bill the full 9 hours? And she's like, yes. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and I mean, I
Yes.
feel like those are some
Yes.
things the account executives think they're like, am I going to get in trouble because I spent 9 hours today? But it's like, no, like
Right.
some weeks you might work 42, 43 hours, and some weeks you might work exactly 40. It's just every week you should be spending 40 hours as a full-time employee. But I think, someone who's from the AE, SAE side is like, it's important to ask those questions, even though if they might sound silly, of like, if I spent 9 hours, do I do the full nine on NetSuite? Yes. Like, duh. Yes, please do it. And I was like, okay, I thought so, but I said double check. Um, I
Yeah.
think it's so important to make sure you're not burning out and spending consistently, more than 8 hours a day.
Mhm. Well, it's exactly 2 o'clock, so I think it's time for us to jump. But this was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it because Jake, you're in the grind as the account executive. Kevin, you're in the middle, taking ownership, vision, and but also managing the account executives. And Hinda, you spent 32 years knowing the power of account executives. So yeah, this has been great, folks. And Kevin, nice to meet you. And Hinda for the first time in what, really 10 years? I think
Long
we're talking.
time.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And Jake, nice beard.
Thank
We,
you.
Jake and I talk probably 4 times a year, but we haven't actually seen each other probably since 2023.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny.
um, well, this was a blast, folks. I really appreciate everybody and hope you have a good rest of the day.
So
Thanks,
great to see
guys.
you
Yeah,
guys.
thanks everybody.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care. Bye.
Bye.